Imagine surviving a brutal attack only to discover later that the person you trusted most was behind it. A story that defies logic, a crime that left a community in shock, and a case that continues to haunt those who remember it. This is the haunting tale of Edwina Martin. In a case that baffled detectives and shocked communities, the lines between victim and perpetrator became eerily blurred. The truth, when uncovered, was more twisted than anyone could have imagined. Edwina Martin's story isn't just another case file, another headline lost in time. It's a chilling account of survival, deception, and a decision so shocking it left even seasoned detectives speechless. By the end of this story, you'll find yourself asking one question. If it happened to her, could it happen to anyone? How does a case like this unfold? How do the lines between justice and loyalty blur beyond recognition? If you think you know where this story is headed, stay with us, because what you're about to hear will change everything. Edwina Angelica Martin was born on May 16, 1986, in Little Rock, Arkansas, where she lived a seemingly normal life. She graduated from McClellan High School in 2004, where she was actively involved in organizations such as the Future Business Leaders of America and the DECA Club. She also performed with the Flagline Dancers during her high school years. Following high school, Edwina attended the University of Arkansas Pulaski Tech, earning an associate's degree. Edwina worked as a phlebotomy technician for several years. Demonstrating her entrepreneurial spirit, she launched her clothing line, Bodacious Beauty Boutique, which garnered a loyal customer base and allowed her to give back to her community. In 2020, she began working as a customer service representative at Blue Cross Blue Shield, where she remained employed until her passing. Edwina's passion for dance was evident through her role as a dance coach for the Bejeweled dance team, a position she held for 4 years. Her daughter served as a captain on the team, and Edwina dedicated significant time and effort to supporting and preparing these young dancers for competitions, both locally and beyond. Edwina was a devoted mother to her 2 children, Danny Maurice Brown III and Danielle Machelle Brown. She cherished her role as a mother and often expressed pride in her children's accomplishments. Edwina was also active on social media, where she shared laughter and positivity with those she connected with. Her friends described her as kind-hearted, intelligent, and full of potential. She had dreams for the future, aspirations that, at one point, seemed within reach. On January 3, 2012, Edwina Martin and her boyfriend, Daniel Hill, were inside her mother's apartment in Little Rock, Arkansas, a cold winter night that seemed like any other. But for Edwina Martin, it would be the night that altered the course of her life forever. What happened next changed everything. The sound of gunfire shattered the night. Edwina was shot in the chest and hip, but miraculously survived. Daniel Hill, however, wasn't so lucky. He was killed in cold blood. As investigators combed through the crime scene, it became evident that this was no random act of violence. The precision of the attack, the calculated execution, it all pointed to a premeditated hit. But by whom? A breakthrough came when detectives reviewed the apartment complex's security footage. The grainy video showed a 2002 Chevrolet Suburban circling the area moments before the shooting. When the footage was enhanced, investigators were able to trace the vehicle's registration. It had been linked to a man named Richard Gordon, Inside the vehicle, a crucial piece of evidence surfaced: pay stubs belonging to none other than Danny Brown. This was the first major link that tied Edwina's former partner to the attack. But it wasn't enough. Police needed more evidence to confirm their suspicions. While Edwina recovered in the hospital, she was visited by detectives. Though weak, she was determined to help find those responsible. When shown a photo lineup, she instantly recognized one of the men, Richard Gordon. Her 10-year-old nephew, who had been in the apartment during the shooting, was also able to identify Quentin Jones as the second assailant. Now, the puzzle was coming together. Richard Gordon and Quentin Jones were hired hitmen, but the real mastermind was still lurking in the shadows. The final piece of the puzzle came when phone records were subpoenaed. Investigators found a string of calls between Danny Brown and Richard Gordon in the days leading up to the attack. The content of these calls, unknown, but their timing, highly suspicious. As detectives dug deeper, they uncovered a chilling motive. Danny Brown, Edwina's ex, had orchestrated the attack. The man she had once loved, the father of her 2 children, was the architect of the horror she had endured. The betrayal was unimaginable. What would make someone turn on the very person they once loved? Edwina and Danny met in Little Rock. He entered her life as someone she believed she could trust. He was convincing and persuasive. They quickly began a relationship. To outsiders, their relationship seemed typical, but beneath the surface, there were signs of something much darker. Over time, they had 2 children together. However, their relationship was turbulent, marked by allegations of domestic abuse. Edwina's close friends and family had growing concerns about her relationship with Danny. They described Danny as controlling, possessive, and physically violent toward her. Their relationship had its fair share of warning signs. At first, it seemed like any other romance. But as time passed, tensions grew. Brown's possessiveness took hold. Before long, the relationship took a dark turn. The control, the manipulation, small moments that didn't seem alarming at first, but in hindsight were warnings of the horrors to come. As their relationship deteriorated, Edwina tried to move on. She eventually started dating another man, Daniel Hill, hoping to build a peaceful life away from Danny's influence. But Danny was not willing to let go. If you found this case shocking, make sure to like this video, comment your thoughts below, and subscribe for more true crime stories that reveal the darkest corners of human nature. The courtroom was packed as the trials of Richard Gordon, Quentin Jones, and Danny Brown began. The world watched as justice was sought for the horrific crime that had shattered lives. Richard Gordon, the trigger man, was found guilty of capital murder and attempted capital murder. He was sentenced to death. Quentin Jones, his accomplice, faced a similar fate. The evidence against them was undeniable. But what about Danny Brown? Edwina Martin, a survivor in every sense of the word, took the stand. Her testimony was powerful, raw, and unforgettable. She spoke of betrayal, of pain, of the nightmare she endured, all at the hands of a man she once knew. What happens next will shock you. It will challenge everything you thought you knew about love, control, and the terrifying grip of manipulation. Because just when you think this story has reached its darkest point, something emerges, revealing a reality far worse than anyone imagined. Brace yourself, because what you're about to hear will not only haunt you, It will make you question everything. Don't miss the next deep dive into the shadows. Hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and let's uncover the truth together. Despite this atrocity, Edwina made the unfathomable decision to marry Danny Brown. The complexities of their relationship baffled many, raising questions about trauma bonding and the psychological grip of abusive relationships. Despite overwhelming evidence linking him to the crime, against all odds, against all logic, Edwina Martin married Danny Brown, the very man believed to have orchestrated the attempt on her life. But why? Love, manipulation, fear. The world demanded answers. Charges against him were unexpectedly dropped. The prosecution decided not to pursue the case, leaving many to question whether true justice had been served. This was not just a relationship, it was a psychological web. Some say she was brainwashed, trapped in a cycle of trauma bonding. Others argue that she sought control over the situation, a way to reclaim power. But one thing is certain, this was a union that defied reason. Outrage, confusion, disbelief. The media swarmed the story, turning it into a national spectacle. Friends and family were divided, some standing by Edwina, others distancing themselves, unable to comprehend her choices. The courtroom of public opinion had reached its verdict. But the truth, that remains far more complex. The case of Edwina Martin is one that will forever be marked by unanswered questions. How does a survivor become tied to the very force that sought to destroy them? What truly happened behind the scenes of this chilling case? And most importantly, what does this case reveal about the human mind, control, and survival? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. If you found this story shocking, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. Because the next story we bring you might be even darker than this one. A woman fights for her life, names her attackers, helps put them behind bars, and then, in a move that defies logic, she stands beside the very man accused of orchestrating it all. The human mind is complex, often shaped by past trauma and deep psychological conditioning. Edwina Martin's decision to marry Danny Brown after he was accused of orchestrating her attempted murder left many in disbelief. But what if this was not a simple case of poor judgment? What if there were deeper forces at play, ones that even she did not fully understand? Trauma bonding, a phenomenon where a victim forms an emotional attachment to their abuser, could have played a significant role. Experts believe that victims in abusive relationships sometimes cling to their abuser as a survival mechanism, hoping to regain control in a situation where they feel powerless. For those on the outside, Danny Brown appeared to be the villain of this tragic story, a man who allegedly masterminded a brutal crime only to later be embraced by his intended victim. But those who understood his past saw something else. A man who may have exhibited strong manipulative tendencies, a master of psychological control. Could he have exhibited traits of narcissistic personality disorder or sociopathy? People like Danny often use charm, coercion, and even fear to maintain control over their victims. Through carefully chosen words, calculated actions, and moments of unexpected kindness, he might have slowly eroded Edwina's ability to see him as a threat, making her believe that staying with him was the safest option. The reality of their relationship defies logic and reason. Was Edwina trapped in a cycle of psychological dependency? Or did she genuinely believe in Danny's innocence? These are the questions that remain unanswered, questions that continue to haunt those who followed this case closely. But the story doesn't end here. What happened after their unexpected union? And what did the future hold for Edwina Martin? Stay with us as we uncover the final, chilling details of this case. If you're invested in unraveling the mysteries behind real-life crime cases, don't forget to like this video, leave a comment with your thoughts, and subscribe for more gripping crime stories. Your support helps us continue bringing these in-depth investigations to light. Edwina's story is not an anomaly. It is a reflection of a much larger, much darker reality. Domestic violence is an epidemic lurking in the shadows of homes across the world. But why do so many victims stay? Why do they return? And more disturbingly, why do some end up standing beside their abusers in ways no one can comprehend? Statistics show that millions suffer from domestic abuse each year, yet only a fraction escape. The warning signs are often there, subtle at first, then impossible to ignore. But for those trapped in toxic cycles, leaving is not as simple as outsiders assume. Fear, financial dependency, emotional manipulation, societal pressure. The reasons are endless. And for Edwina, the bonds of her past, her vulnerabilities, and perhaps even love, kept her shackled to a man who nearly took her life. The justice system is meant to protect, but does it always succeed? Despite overwhelming evidence, Danny Brown walked free, his charges mysteriously dropped. How could this happen? Was it a failure of the prosecution, a lack of evidence, or something far more harmful, a loophole in a system meant to serve justice? Edwina's testimony was compelling, yet even the strongest voices sometimes fall on deaf ears. The courts saw a case of violence, but did they see a case of coercion, a case of psychological imprisonment? The justice system is meant to protect, but does it always succeed? The legal system's handling of Edwina's case serves as a chilling reminder. Justice is not always swift, and it is not always served. The case of Edwina Martin is one of survival, manipulation, and a justice system that may have let a mastermind walk free. But what happened next? How did Edwina's story truly end? And what does this case tell us about the way society handles the most unthinkable crimes? Stay with us because the truth is far from over. After the trials concluded, Edwina Martin's life took a path that few could have predicted. She had survived a brutal attempt on her life, lost her boyfriend to an execution-style murder, and later found herself entangled in a complex legal case that ultimately left more questions than answers. Following the courtroom battles, Edwina faded from the public eye. She rarely made media appearances and chose to keep her personal life away from scrutiny. While some reports suggested she attempted to rebuild her life in a different city, others speculated she remained in Arkansas, living under the weight of her past. Public statements from Edwina were scarce, and when she did speak, it was often to recount the horrors of that night. The emotional scars left by the incident lingered, and there were whispers about the psychological toll it had taken on her. Some sources claimed she underwent therapy, trying to process the trauma and the shocking choices she made in the aftermath. Others believed she sought solace in religious faith or community support. Yet, one lingering question remained. Did she ever truly escape Danny Brown's influence? Even after the trials, the discussions, and the shocking revelations, some believe that the psychological grip he had on her never fully disappeared. 11 years later, the cycle of violence reached its tragic conclusion. On March 27, 2023, Edwina was found murdered in her home. The man responsible, Danny Brown. After taking her life, Danny fled, becoming the subject of an intense manhunt. Authorities warned the public that he was armed and dangerous, urging anyone with information to come forward. Edwina's obituary paints the picture of a devoted mother, a beloved daughter, and a cherished friend. Her smile and personality were described as genuine, leaving an indelible mark on all who knew her. She was laid to rest on April 15, 2023, at Williams Temple, Church of God in Christ, the same church where she had found solace and community. Edwina's story serves as a haunting reminder of the importance of recognizing the signs of abuse and the urgent need for intervention before it's too late. If you or someone you know is experiencing domestic violence, please reach out to local support services. Remember, help is available, and you are not alone. This was a case that gripped an entire community, one that sent shockwaves far beyond the borders of Little Rock, Arkansas. A woman survives an assassination attempt, only to marry the man who ordered it. Then, years later, she meets a fate even more horrifying than before. The tragic story of Edwina Martin and Danny Brown is more than a headline. It's a shocking reality of domestic violence, psychological control, and a justice system that couldn't prevent the inevitable. But how did the world react? How did the media, the public, and the legal system handle a case so layered with betrayal and tragedy? And more importantly, what lessons are we left with today? This is the aftermath. This is the legacy. The moment Edwina Martin was shot in 2012 and her boyfriend Daniel Hill was executed at point-blank range, the media descended. Local news stations like KATV and THV11 provided updates as the case unfolded, detailing how law enforcement pieced together the assassination attempt, identified the hitmen, and traced everything back to Danny Brown. Court documents, witness testimonies, and police statements painted a gruesome portrait of a man willing to eliminate his partner, but for reasons that still puzzled investigators. The most baffling turn came when, years after surviving, Edwina willingly entered into marriage with the very man who orchestrated her attempted murder. News outlets scrambled to make sense of the psychological grip that Danny had on her. Was it trauma bonding? Fear? A twisted version of love? Then, in March 2023, when Edwina was found murdered in her home, media outlets erupted once more. The once bizarre, nearly unbelievable saga had reached its final, tragic chapter. News cameras captured the frantic search for Danny Brown, who was now a fugitive, and interviews with neighbors, family, and friends revealed a community divided between grief, shock, and a haunting sense of inevitability. Beyond traditional news coverage, social media platforms became arenas for heated discussions. On Facebook and Twitter, debates raged. Why would she go back to him? This is why we need stronger domestic violence laws. The justice system failed her. This is deeper than what we see on the surface. In online forums, people dissected every aspect of the case, trying to rationalize the irrational. Some blamed the legal system for not prosecuting Danny Brown back in 2012. Others pointed to Edwina's state of mind, arguing that psychological trauma played a role in her choices. But one question kept surfacing again and again. Could Edwina's fate have been prevented? Before her untimely death, Edwina tried to rebuild. She poured her energy into motherhood, raising her children with the hope of giving them a future untainted by the horrors she had endured. She continued running Bodacious Beauty Boutique, her clothing business, and maintained a quiet presence on social media. There were no public statements about Danny Brown, no interviews, no tell-all stories. It was as if she had locked that chapter away. But behind the silence, was she ever truly free? Those who knew her say that despite her efforts to move forward, there was always a shadow over her, a weight that never lifted. And then, on March 27th, 2023, it all ended in the most devastating way imaginable. While no direct legal reforms came from Edwina's case, it reignited discussions on domestic violence laws, protective orders, and the psychological manipulation that keeps victims trapped in abusive relationships. Legal analysts pointed out the alarming gap in the justice system, how a man who orchestrated a murder was able to walk free and later kill the very woman he once sought to eliminate. It raised urgent questions. Should laws be stricter on attempted murder cases, even when the direct mastermind isn't the one who pulled the trigger? Should victims of violent crimes receive mandatory psychological support to help them break free from the cycle of abuse? How do we identify trauma bonding and prevent situations like Edwina's before they reach a fatal conclusion? Edwina's story may not have rewritten laws, but it serves as a powerful cautionary tale, one that continues to echo in conversations about domestic abuse, justice, and the unseen battles victims fight every day. Now we turn to you, the viewer. What do you think about Edwina's case? Should the justice system have done more back in 2012? What warning signs should people look for in abusive relationships? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Your voice matters. And if you found this story eye-opening, like, share, and subscribe to help spread awareness about the dangers of domestic violence. The more we talk about these cases, the more we can prevent tragedies like Edwina's from happening again. Edwina Martin's story is one of survival, but also one of tragedy. She endured an assassination attempt, forgave the man who plotted it, married him, and ultimately lost her life at his hands. It's a case that leaves behind more questions than answers. How did Danny Brown escape justice for so long? Why did Edwina choose to stay? And most importantly, how many other people are silently living in the same nightmare right now? This isn't just about one woman's tragic end. It's about the countless victims of domestic violence whose stories never make the news. It's about a society that too often asks, why didn't they just leave, instead of holding abusers accountable? So the next time you see the signs, the bruises, the fear in someone's eyes, the quiet apologies for things they shouldn't have to apologize for, will you speak up? Or will we wait until another name makes the headlines?